Hello and welcome to ESPN FC Live. Mark Donaldson, delighted to be alongside Stewart Robson and Rob Dawson. Later on, we'll be joined by Alex Kirkland to preview the big games in La Liga this weekend. There's a big one in the Bundesliga. Bayern Munich taking on Bayer Leverkusen. That's this afternoon. Today, we start, though, in the English Premier League. In Manchester United, Jadon Sancho, all sorts going on. Brighton at Old Trafford this weekend. Let's get stuck into this one. Robbo, first of all, it's got nothing to do with you, me, or Rob, the fact that the graphic, bright yellow, says Man United mess. But it's not great. What do you make of everything that's happened during the international break at Old Trafford, and where does it leave them ahead of this Brighton game?
It leaves them, I would say, in a bit of trouble. Obviously, they've got injury problems in the centre-half area. Anthony, is going to be out the Manchester United squad for a while other things are taken care of. And the Sancho incident, no Anthony, you'd want Sancho back in the team, but he's caused one or two problems. The manager and him don't get on at the moment. And instead of being in the squad, he's training with the reserves or the under-23s. So things aren't quite right at Manchester United, and it's a big game for them because they've lost a couple. That game against Arsenal, where it could have gone either way. They lost against Arsenal. They need to get back on form and get some results. So massive game for them against Brighton.
Rob, Manchester's your beat. How could this have been handled better by both the club and Jadon Sancho?
Yeah, I mean, it's probably a question that does need to be asked whether Ten Hag has handled this in the right way. Obviously, this has started with Ten Hag making his reasons for dropping Jadon Sancho for the Arsenal game public. After that game, he said that it was because he wasn't training properly. Sancho has then decided to respond to that on social media and say that those reasons were completely untrue and that kind of hinted that there was other factors at play. Once Jadon Sancho has then challenged the authority of Erik Ten Hag, I don't think that the club could have handled it in any other way. That Ten Hag has been very, very firm in his stance that discipline in the squad is everything for him at Man United, that he values that even above almost results, that he wants to be seen as the guy who's in charge. So once Sancho has decided to challenge him publicly, Ten Hag feels that he's got no choice then but to punish him. And that punishment at the moment is him being removed from the first team squad and training on his own. At the moment, there's a little bit of a standoff now in that Ten Hag doesn't really want to address this until Jadon Sancho apologises privately to him and also in public. And Sancho at the moment is refusing to do that. So you've got a case where you've got the manager who's not backing down over his reasons for dropping Sancho. You've got Sancho who's also not backing down over his right to reply and his views on the entire situation, and it's a bit of a standoff, and that sidebar on the side of the screen is right, that situation is a bit of a mess. There is no time frame now for Jadon Sancho's return to the squad. At the moment, he's unavailable for the foreseeable future.
Robbo, you've been in many dressing rooms over the years, and with all the players together, player power can prove problematic for managers, but that's with all the players together. This is X versus Y. This is one player versus the manager. That usually ends with the manager winning, doesn't it?
In the 1v1 situations, unless the player is a very important player. Ten Hag got his way with Ronaldo, and that, I think, set Manchester United off in a good way. It said to everybody that Ten Hag was in control. Ronaldo wasn't going to dictate to everybody else what should happen, as he's done at previous clubs. But Sancho, every player has to be dealt with in a different way. And I was lucky enough with Dan Thomas to talk to Edin Terzic at the beginning of the season in Las Vegas. And we asked him about Sancho and said, are you surprised that he hasn't really done as well as he should have done at Manchester United? And straight away he said, no, I'm not surprised. When we had him Borussia Dortmund, he had to be a player that had to have an arm around him. We had to take care of him. We had to develop him. We had to make sure he had the right mental state from week to week. And we knew when he went to Manchester United, he wasn't going to get that at such a big club. There's so many other people that are going to have to be treated in different ways. And he realised that Sancho wasn't going to get that sort of arm around his shoulder that he got at Borussia Dortmund. So it was suggesting that Sancho maybe off the field and he's discipline, maybe his philosophy about the way he wants things to go at a football club weren't quite right. But Borussia Dortmund got the best out of him. Manchester United and Ten Hag at the moment can't do that. So that's a problem for the manager.
Yeah, Manchester United, the players, the management team and the fans would rather focus on the game against Brighton, Rob, than this issue, which isn't going to be an issue come kickoff time. I'm not sure they could have had much worse opponents because they're up against a Brighton side that's free-flowing and scoring goals and having fun. But it leaves United with a bit of a dilemma. What are they going to do in that kind of right wide area as far as taking on Brighton are concerned? Because they've got fullbacks that do like to get forward.
Yeah, I mean, Stewart sort of mentioned there that there are issues at United within the squad beyond the Sancho problem. Obviously, there is a very pressing need now on the right-hand side. You've got Sancho who's unavailable. Anthony is also unavailable because he's got a leave of absence away from the club. The options for Ten Hag are Bruno Fernandes. He's done it in the past. He's done it in the past for Portugal, and Ten Hag has used Fernandes on the right-hand side as well. But, there's a school of thought that Fernandes is United's most creative player, and do you remove him from that central role to plug a gap on the right? Do you lose something from the entire team if you do that? The other option is Pellistri, a very, very young player who hasn't played an awful lot of football under Ten Hag, has impressed United fans when he's come on for his little 5-10 minute cameos. Maybe now is the time to give him a real run in the team. Obviously, it's a very big ask for a relatively young player to fill that gap. But, at the moment, Ten Hag has got problems to solve all over the pitch. Stuart mentioned there that he's got issues at centre-half. There are issues in the centre of midfield with no Amrabat and no Mount. And you've touched on it there. This run of games that they've got really couldn't come at a worse time. They've got Brighton at home on Saturday. Then they've got Bayern Munich away in the Champions League midweek. And then away at Burnley the following weekend. And, United at the moment are rocking a little bit. And Ten Hag will know that results solve everything. If they can get 3 good results, this issue with Sancho and things, that'll seem, in the distant past almost. But if things don't go right on the pitch, if they don't beat Brighton, if they lose to Bayern, if they then go to Burnley and lose, you're almost in sort of full-on crisis mode a couple of weeks into the season. And that's obviously not where Ten Hag wants to be.
They might have someone getting his first start, Robbo, as part of the 78 leagues that you cover on a weekly basis. Serie A is one of them. Rasmus Højlund, you saw him at Atalanta. He made an impact as a sub just before the international break when he finally recovered from injury. A, are you expecting a start against Brighton for Højlund? And B, what can Manchester United fans expect for a player that the club spent a lot of money on?
I'm hoping he gets a start, and I'm expecting him to get a start. Martial, was flattered to deceive for far too long. So I'm hoping Højlund can come in and do a good job. Now, he's a player that's got most of the qualities you would expect of a good centre forward. He's got enough pace to run in behind. He can trouble defenders running down the side of him. He's good enough in the air to win balls when crosses come into the box. He's a decent finisher when I've seen him play. And his technique is quite good. Is he the player that will take Manchester United to the next level? I don't think he's the player at the moment. In maybe a year, 2 years' time, he could be a top-class player. At the moment, he's a good player that is developing into a very good player. So I'm not sure he's going to pull up any trees at the moment, but he's a player that I think Manchester United will get the best out of maybe in 2 years' time.
Rob, if he's fully fit, is there any reason not to start Rasmus Højlund for Manchester United against Brighton?
No. They are short of forward players because of the issues we mentioned previously. Højlund did particularly well when he came on against Arsenal. He looked very, very sharp. He looked like the type of centre forward that United have been missing over the last couple of years. He's 20 years old. There's an awful lot expected of him. There's an awful lot of pressure on his shoulders, but he has to start sooner rather than later. The only other options really at centre forward for Man United are Anthony Martial, who Stewart said has flattered to deceive, has not really put in a consistent run of form for a couple of years now. Or Marcus Rashford, who can do the job as a centre forward, but much prefers playing on the left-hand side. So if you're Erik ten Hag looking to construct your front three to play Brighton, there's absolutely no reason at all why Rasmus Højlund shouldn't start. Play Marcus Rashford on the left, and then you've got an issue to solve on the right. So I would very much expect Højlund to start against Brighton on Saturday.
That's the 3 p.m. local time kickoff, one of several kicking off in the Premier League at that time. The early game is Wolves against Liverpool. Now, before we get Robbo and Rob's predictions for that one and looking ahead to that fixture, no Trent Alexander-Arnold through injury for Liverpool, by the way. Jurgen Klopp at his press conference was speaking about the early kickoff, especially with the number of players he's had away on various continents on international duty. Here's what he had to say.
Are you serious with the question? Or?
Yeah.
What do you mean? What is the difference when you play 30 hours ago in Bolivia. What do you think is the reason? Do you think it's that I didn't understand. Is that something about the time, or is it the lack of time between?
Is it specifically playing at that time on a Saturday that can be problematic?
That's not a problem if you're a normal week. We always said that. If you're a normal week, it's not a problem. 12:30. That's easy to adapt. The only problem is the lack of recovery time. So we have 4 international breaks until March. 2 of them we have already the 12:30 kickoff. If I say a word about it, then the whole world goes again. He starts moaning again. This is a joke. We have players in South America. I didn't see them yet. In 24 hours we play.
Okay, Robbo, you like a moan. Has he got a point? Because if it's not him, it's going to be somebody else complaining about this. And there's billions in TV rights at stake, so someone's going to have this issue.
Of course, it's not ideal for Liverpool and Jurgen Klopp, but he can't have it all his own way. There's going to be, as you said, if it wasn't Liverpool, it'd be somebody else. And the 12:30 kickoff is usually one of the top teams because that's why it goes all around the world. He's just got to put up with it. And by keep moaning about it, all you do is give the players an excuse to be tired. You don't tell the players that this is, you should be, maybe he is telling the players that I'm just going to go into the press and say this. We have to be up for the game. We have to be ready for the game. This is a massive game for us. We need to win it. I think we're ready for it, and let's go out and play, rather than moaning and saying that the players here, there, and everywhere. If it wasn't Liverpool, it would be somebody else.
It's not ideal, Rob, but look, when you're a top team with top players that play international football all around the world, this is going to happen. They take on a Wolves side at Molineux, who have only won once this season in the Premier League. That was at Everton, so they've not won at home yet. And a Liverpool side minus Trent Alexander-Arnold, but they haven't lost in the Premier League this season. 3 wins and a draw. Liverpool favourites, but how much is the absence of Trent Alexander-Arnold potentially going to hinder Jurgen Klopp?
And I think when you lose any top player, it's going to affect your team, and particularly with Trent, he seems to have slotted into that kind of hybrid fullback midfield role that Jurgen Klopp's asking him to do particularly well, and seems to be sort of a creative hub in there with the way that he's been asked to play. Obviously, it's going to hurt Liverpool not having a player like that available, but I would still expect Liverpool to have enough to win that game. The one thing I would say is that perhaps a few teams already this season have underestimated Wolves. United certainly did on the opening weekend of the season, given that the Wolves had a quite a traumatic summer with a change of manager. But they played particularly well that night against United and probably deserved an awful lot more than they got. So I'm sure that even though Jurgen Klopp's having a big moan about when the fixtures played, he'll be taking the game seriously and making sure that his players are fully prepared. And if it goes the way that we expect, Liverpool should win relatively comfortably, I would have thought.
Yeah, Wolves against Liverpool is the early kickoff. Another one that's 3 p.m. local time in England, 10 a.m. out here on the East Coast is West Ham against Manchester City. And Robbo, West Ham are 4th. They've had a brilliant start to the season. A couple of really good additions eventually, not so much over the summer, but just towards the start of the season. And that's a tough one for Manchester City, who've been flawless so far as results are concerned. 4 wins out of 4. There have been some games where they haven't quite hit top form yet. What do you reckon to this one?
Well, I think I know exactly how the game's going to go. I watched this game last season, and if I was the West Ham supporter or the West Ham chairman, I'd have had serious words with the management after the game. West Ham didn't come out and play. They were at home in front of 60-odd thousand, and they allowed Manchester City the ball. They allowed Manchester City to dictate the game, and eventually I think Man City won 2-0 without West Ham having hardly a shot at goal. David Moyes will have exactly the same approach in this game. Even though they are 4th in the table, even though they're doing quite well at the moment, he will play just as they did against Brighton away when they won 4-1, sit deep, try and win the ball back in and around their defensive third, and then play on the counter-attack. Now, Manchester City are harder to counter-attack than Brighton were that day, so I can only see one result. Yes, it might be a tough game for Man City, but I think they should win the game quite comfortably in the end because West Ham won't come out and cause them too many problems apart from on the counter-attack.
Okay, on Sunday, Chelsea go to Bournemouth, Rob, and Arsenal are at Everton. Does Gabriel Jesus start?
Well, I mean, he scored, didn't he, late on against United, so I'm sure that he's hoping that he will do. It's a big game very early in the season for Arsenal. I don't think that Arsenal have won at Goodison Park since Arsene Wenger was manager, if I'm right. So it's one of those games, those really tricky games that if you're going to really challenge for the title and and get right up there by May. You really need to be winning these types of games. Obviously, Everton haven't started the season well at all, but Goodison Park, when the fans get up, is a really, really tough place to go. Pep Guardiola, ever since he's been in England, has always identified that game at Goodison Park as a really key fixture wherever Everton are in the league. If you can get through that game and win that game, he's always thought that it really shows that you have those title credentials. I'm sure that Arsenal will be feeling the same, and obviously a place where they haven't done fantastically well over recent years. But if they could win that game, and that really is a sort of a quiet title marker that this team again is for real this season.
Robbo, we don't have to go back to your days playing for Arsenal for the last time that they won at Goodison, but Rob's right. It's nearly 6 years. Nacho Monreal among the goals, Mesut Ozil, Aaron Ramsey, but Everton aren't good right now. Anything but an Arsenal win for you?
No, I can only see Arsenal doing well in the game and winning the game. I think they're playing some excellent football at the moment. I think they've got the bit between their teeth. They've got a great spirit. Even when they're losing games or might not be up in games, they can still come and get results in the last few minutes. And, added on time now goes on for a long time. And Arsenal got that spirit to go and win games. So I can only see an Arsenal win.
Okay. Rob, thank you for your input today. Enjoy your weekend. Do you have a game to go to this weekend? Are you heading down to London, or are you staying put in Manchester for the Brighton game? What are you doing?
Yeah, United Brighton for me, Old Trafford Saturday. Hopefully a nice, entertaining game. I'm sure Brighton will fancy their chances. There'll be a few people heading to Old Trafford thinking there might be an upset.
Enjoy it. Thank you for your company. We're going to move on to the Bundesliga. And before we get Robbo's take on the big one today, I want to preview what we have. Bayern Munich taking on Bayer Leverkusen this afternoon from 2:30. That's the kickoff. Half an hour beforehand is when we are on air. Stewart Robson will be providing the commentary alongside Derek Ray for that one. Kay Murray and Alejandro Moreno will be in the studio. And pitchside for us, Arne Friedrich, alongside Jan Aga Fjørtoft. Now, Harry Kane at Bayern Munich, Stewart Robson, but Bayer Leverkusen are flying. Game of the season so far for you?
Absolutely. We thought that Bayer Leverkusen would be a good side this season. That's proved to be the case. They're scoring goals. They're playing free-flowing football. The manager looks as though he's got the best out of the team. When he came in last year, they were struggling. He's taken them right up the table. And now they look like the side to beat for Bayern Munich. The only problem is that it's in Munich, and we've seen these games before. We had one last season against Borussia Dortmund where we were talking about this could be the title decider, and the game was all over after 20 minutes when Bayern went 3-0 up. But I don't think that's going to be the case here. Bayern haven't been at their very best, and Bayer Leverkusen have. And I just see slight weaknesses at times in Bayern when they are attacking, not their attacking play, but they can be counter-attacked. And that's where Leverkusen could cause them problems.
I'm sure there'll be a lot of casual viewers for this one, given the magnitude of the fixture. And if they haven't seen Bayern Munich and Harry Kane so far this season, what would you say are the biggest differences in Bayern with Kane compared to last season when they won the league without him, albeit only just?
I think this role, or the position that Harry Kane plays, suits Bayern Munich, and Bayern Munich suit Harry Kane at the moment, because he's not the out-and-out centre forward that stays up front all the time. He likes to come 10, 20 yards deeper. At times we saw him with England come a little bit too deep, but he'll come 10, 20 yards deeper. And that's when you get the pace of the likes of Sane, who's playing well at the moment. Coman running beyond him. Gnabry when he's playing. We usually see Musiala playing the number 10 role, but it's going to probably be Muller because Musiala's injured. But those players all will go beyond Harry Kane. But when the ball comes in the box, when those players are going past their people in wide areas, Harry Kane will find that bit of space in the box. And they've got two midfield players that have done well so far. Kimmich, there's a slight doubt whether he's going to be playing in this game due to injury. And Goretzka, who most people thought was going to be out the side for Lima, but Goretzka's back in the side. He's been making good forward runs. So at the moment, I think Bayern Munich look a very good side going forward. Davies is reproducing some of the form we saw a couple of years ago. But I still think they have one or two problems defensively when they're being counterattacked.
Yeah, something that Leverkusen will certainly try and exploit. I remember commentating on Leverkusen's win at Bayern 11 years ago. Sidney Sam scored 3 minutes from time in a 2-1 win. And would you believe it, only once since then have Leverkusen won at Bayern. And that was Leon Bailey scoring a couple of times in a 2-1 win as well. How much is it about belief for Leverkusen, about Xabi Alonso getting his players up for this one and saying, you know what, they might be the defending champions, they might have Harry Kane, but we've started this season pretty well as well.
Well, they've got total confidence. It's not just been these first 3 or 4 games. It's been last season as well.
Yep.
When he took over, they were doing so poorly. They built up, and he looked to produce a really or develop a really good team. And now they're showing it again this season. That first away win at Leipzig was excellent for them. Then they won against Darmstadt 5-1, so they can score goals. They look an outstanding side. They've got players that are playing at the top of their game. Boniface is scoring goals and looks a threat whenever he's running through. Wirtz, who's in the German side at the moment, looks a threat when he's going forwards. Same with Hoffmann. And I think it'll be almost the same side, apart from Palacios might not start because he is late back from international duty. Something that Jurgen Klopp might want to talk about at some point, that some players won't even be able to play elsewhere. But I think they're going to the game full of confidence, and it should be an excellent example of what the Bundesliga can bring you.
Yeah, I remember the last away game at Mönchengladbach, and you kind of looked at that and you go, it's a tough one for Leverkusen. They won 3-0, and I thought they were excellent that day. Do you think they adopt similar tactics against Bayern and kind of let them worry about us, or do you think they maybe are a little bit more compact today, something that hasn't really worked when they've gone to the Allianz Arena in recent years?
I don't think they're going to be overly defensive, but whenever you go against a top team, you have to have the balance right. You know, they've got to have a game plan when they haven't got the ball and a game plan when they have got the ball. And when they haven't got the ball, they've got to make Bayern Munich as predictable as possible. I always say that when you're playing against the top teams. It's much easier to defend against a team when you know which way they're coming. And if you force them down one side of the field and then try and lock them in, it's much easier to defend. And I'm sure that's what Alonso will be trying to do. Where they win the ball back, when are they going to press the ball? When are they going to win the ball back? And where the space is going to be when they can counterattack? Because, again, that is where I think Bayern could be vulnerable. Either side of the centre-backs, who sometimes just leave themselves just the two at the back. The two full-backs like to get forward. So there's going to be plenty of opportunities, I think, for Bayer Leverkusen to defend well all around the pitch, but not necessarily too deeply, win the ball back and counter-attack and play the game on the front foot.
Finally, before we move on to La Liga, European action during the week. It's Haken at home in the Europa League for Bayer Leverkusen, but it's Manchester United at home for Bayern Munich. There won't be an eye cast towards that game, will there? They're too professional for that, Bayern Munich, aren't they?
Absolutely. Any team is too professional for that. You can only play the game that's in front of you. Forget what's going on in 2-3 days' time. If you get tired, if you get injuries, other players will have to come in. But you have to play the game that you're playing tonight. You know, and you've got to give it 100% and be. And in this situation, both sides have got to be at their best if they want to win.
Okay, let's welcome in Alex Kirkland here to talk about La Liga. And we're about 20 minutes into ESPN FC Live. And thankfully, Robbo has yet to mention that England absolutely destroyed Scotland at Hampden. And there's a reason for that and why I'm bringing it up, because it's Kieran Tierney against Jude Bellingham on Sunday, Alex. From a Scottish perspective, it would be quite the surprise if Kieran Tierney exacted revenge, albeit Sociedad has only lost 2 of their last 6 against Real Madrid. What are you looking forward to in this one?
Yeah, it's going to be a great game. Real Sociedad are always good to watch. We've seen some good games between them and Real Madrid in the last few years. I guess Bellingham will get a lot of the attention. You know, the question will be, can Bellingham keep up this extraordinary form that he's had so far this season? He has been Madrid's best player so far this season. He's been the most influential player in the league so far this season with his 5 goals in 4 games. You know, some people might start to question, are Madrid, are they over-reliant on Bellingham? I'd look at it in a more positive way. I'd say they've got Bellingham and he's brilliant and he's winning them games. It's true that Madrid, they've needed Bellingham to get them out of trouble, more than once so far this season. Look at the last game against Getafe. It was 1-1 in the 95th minute. Bellingham scores the winner, gets them the 3 points. The game before that against Celta, it was 0-0, 80-odd minutes. Bellingham scores the winner, gets them the 3 points. The week before that against Almeria, they were 1-0 down to Almeria Madrid. Bellingham scores twice and they win the game. So yes, the focus will be on Bellingham once again. Can he keep up this incredible scoring record, scoring goals in every game, and not just scoring goals, but decisive, important goals that get Madrid points as well. But yeah, it'll be fascinating to see Kieran Tierney and how he gets on. He had a solid start to his Real Sociedad career in the previous game and looked pretty good. And I think once he gets sort of settled in, I've got really high hopes for him. I think he could be one of the best fullbacks in La Liga because he's so good going forward.
Robbo, as someone that played the position of Jude Bellingham right now. What are you seeing that's impressed you most? Because he's looking like an absolute Rolls Royce whenever he plays for any team right now, whether it's club or country.
It's his ability on the ball. I always thought he was a powerful player, a good runner with the ball, but it's his ability to manipulate the ball and find those key passes. That's what's impressed me most. I didn't think that was part of his game, but it's proved at Real Madrid and for England the other day that is a big part of his game. My only question mark about Jude Bellingham is he's got to make sure he doesn't overrun himself. So he keeps trying to make runs in between the two centre forwards, keeps trying to break the offside line. You've got to pick the right time to do it. If you keep doing it and your ball doesn't come, you're wasting energy. He's got to do it at the right times. And at the moment, that's been the case. But I've seen just one or two games where he's made probably 10, 15 runs where he hasn't been picked out. And that wastes a lot of energy. He's a player that's still young. He's still developing. He's a great player. But he's got to make sure he doesn't wear himself out by making too many runs that prove fruitless.
I think that's a really good point, Alex, because after the Scotland game, he kind of said during the post-match interview, that's more like it. He said, I wasn't happy with my performance against Ukraine for England. So there's definitely self-awareness there. But it's because the way he started and his price tag, 105 million from Dortmund, the expectation is that he's going to be this star in the middle of the park. But as Robbo said, sometimes we forget it was only 12 months ago since he was a teenager.
Yeah, and let's see if he stays fit as well, because you guys watch a lot more of the Bundesliga than I do. But I understand that his injury record with Dortmund was quite hit and miss, and it would be a disaster right now for Madrid if Bellingham were to pick up an injury. Because remember, Thibaut Courtois is out, Eden Militao is out, Vinicius Junior is out. Although Vinny might be back sooner than we thought. He's looking to get back in a week or two. But they've already got the keeper out, arguably their best defender, and arguably their best forward as well. So they would not want to see Bellingham get injured, because right now he's the player scoring the goals, as I've said, and winning games. So, fingers crossed he can stay fit.
We spoke about Bayern Munich against Bayer Leverkusen on ESPN Plus today. Robbo's commentating on that. Rayo Vallecano against Alaves is also on ESPN Plus. That gets game week 5 in La Liga off and running. Robbo, you're on double duty this weekend with a good one as well from La Liga on Saturday. Barcelona against Real Betis. 3 p.m. kickoff for that one. Lewandowski talking about happy where he is, not at all interested in Saudi Arabia. But the man on the right-hand side of the screen is having a fantastic start to the season now that he's found somewhere that they love him and he loves playing for them. What do you expect from this?
I have to say, last season, Betis did okay. But whenever I did them, they were the most disappointing side that I did in La Liga. I didn't like the style of football. I thought that was when Fekir got injured and they had no real playmaker. I was always disappointed. I came away from games thinking, how are Betis in that position that they are at the moment? Pellegrini's style of football looks to be very basic at the moment. There doesn't seem to be a game plan. They're just trying to stop the opposition playing rather than going for the games, so going for the win. But I think there might be something different this season. Hopefully that's the case. Barcelona aren't at their very best. They haven't they're flattered to deceive at times in terms of their midfield players. They've got one or two problems injury-wise, one or two players that aren't playing at their very best. I think it will be tight, but I, again, think Barcelona should win the game.
Isco is having a really good start to the season for Betis, but someone else on the other side is playing so well. And I'm sure it's a quiz question. It's actually one I don't know if I have the answer for right now. How many players have scored for their country before they've scored for their club? And when commentating on Barcelona at Villarreal recently, Lamine Yamal did everything but score, hitting the frame of the goal twice and setting up Lewandowski. So are you expecting a start from him if available for selection in this one, Alex?
It looks like it right now, because he's been so good for Barca since he came into the team, and he's looked so important. He's looked like the player who's going to make something happen. He's got that spark. He's playing with kind of confidence and the freedom of youth as well. It feels like a matter of time before he scores plenty of goals for Barca, because we've seen him hit the woodwork already numerous times this season. He, as I say, he's got that confidence to go for goal, to make things happen. Yeah, I think right now, the way that he's playing, of course he can't play every game. At some point, he's going to have to be protected. He's going to have to be rested. And there are other Barca players who are in okay form. We've seen Ferran Torres doing really well for Spain, for example, during the international break. He's a player that could come into the team potentially in that position. But yeah, I think Lamine Yamal right now, if the coaches, what they're seeing from him physically and in training is that he's okay. There's no risk of kind of injury or fatigue or burnout. I think he has to keep his place.
Is the game of the weekend on Monday, Alex, with Champions League chasing Girona going to Granada?
Girona are good to watch, you know. Girona are good to watch. Don't underrate
No, they
Girona.
are.
They were great last season. They've been really good so far this season as well. Michel, arguably doing one of the coaching jobs in Spain anywhere right now with what he's getting out of that team, especially when you look at the players that Girona lost someone like Aurel Romeo, who went to Barca in the summer, who was key for them last year. Yeah, they play some really nice football.
All 380 games in La Liga are live and exclusive in North America on ESPN+. And one final plug for Robbo's game this afternoon. It's Bayern Munich against Bayer Leverkusen. It's the two teams who've won all three games at the top of the table. Coverage begins at 2 p.m. Eastern, 11 a.m. out west, with K. Murray and Alejandro Moreno in studio, and kickoff half an hour later between Bayern Munich and Bayer Leverkusen. There's plenty for you on ESPN Plus this weekend if they're in the United States. Robbo, thank you as always. Busy weekend for you coming up. And Alex, enjoy where you are and what you're going to see this weekend. I'm Mark Donaldson. Thanks to our guests, to Rob Dawson as well. The Premier League's back. The Bundesliga starts again this afternoon, and La Liga Game Week 5 kicks off today on Friday. Full reaction across the weekend here at ESPN FC. If you're going to a game or just watching it on TV this weekend, enjoy it, and we'll be right here with full reaction over the next few days. Bye for now.